Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. We love you in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. You're the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful April the 20th, 2021. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it's a beautiful, gorgeous day down south. I just want to say I've joined that list of African-American male senior citizens who have gone out and gotten that COVID-19 vaccination. I couldn't feel a thing. It just went in. She gave me the injection, Charlton. I walked out. I haven't had any ill effects of it, and I want to encourage every American to get the COVID-19 vaccination. You may not save just your life, Charlton, but you may save the life of someone you come in contact with. Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders, and especially the nurse who gave me the injection today, Charlton.
Very well said, Big C. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars never stop arriving. Also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, love pausing, Big C. A lot of people have been pausing today, but I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced, helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, our veterans have been in crisis in this nation for decades. Many people have forgotten about the great men and women who have served in our armed forces that protected us. We're pre-distracted with things that go on in the court. We're pre-distracted with the COVID-19, Charlton. But we're losing over 24 veterans that made a suicide, a very horrific number. And America needs to take light of that, Charlton, because those veterans gave so much, and they expect so little in return, and America has given them so little in return.
Yep.
We need to find a way to stop the suicide amongst our veterans and our everyday citizens in America, Charlton. It is a true pandemic that can come to an end. You don't need a vaccine to get rid of suicide, Charlton. You just need to pay attention to the people that are around you and give them the emotional support that they really need. And this is something that the country needs, is emotional support for everybody, but especially our veterans.
Very well said. It's a symphony of life. All you got to do is call 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can definitely get some help for our veterans and their loved ones. Also very happy to be affiliated with Valley, home with weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run king, Barry Bonds. When you reach out to him, just tell him Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, just like McDonald's does it, car dealers do it, sports teams do it, watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender in the country on the wholesale side. Also, I want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and just say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world. And I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. So, Big C, I want to, a lot of things have been happening. Today is 420. So, for our brethren who celebrate 420, congratulations to you. May you have a relaxing day, if that makes sense to you. Also, you mentioned that you had your COVID vaccination today. And I want to ask you, because a lot of people have done PSAs on it, where there's, athletes, politicians doing their PSAs. Former President Obama did his PSA on it a couple of weeks ago. Many athletes have talked about it, the great Bill Russell. Give me your feeling again. Is it any different than the flu shot that you've had many, many moons ago, Big C? Your thoughts?
Charlton, it was a simple injection. I sit down, I filled out a form, I go in, I roll up my sleeve. The nurse asked me which arm did I prefer. I told her, my non-dominant arm, which was my left. She rolled up the sleeve, stuck the needle in, and it was very quick, Charlton. It was painless. It was one of the easiest injections I've ever had in my life, and I've had dozens and dozens of needles stuck in me, Charlton, for various reasons over my lifetime.
Yeah.
But I think the most exciting part, and it was laughable also to a point, because she asked me, did I want to suck her like I was a 4-year-old child. and all I could do was giggle. I mean, She made it a fun thing to go through.
Yeah.
To get the COVID-19 vaccination, Charlton, I encourage everybody. I know a lot of people are skeptical of it, especially in the African-American community. I'm a black man just like many in America, Charlton, and I had no hesitation. They called me. They told me they had a cancellation, and could I be there within an hour? I think I was there in about 18 minutes.
Yeah.
After the call was made, I hurried down, got the injection, Charlton, sit there for 10 minutes or so, no reaction, came home. But it's a beautiful thing. Get the COVID-19 vaccination, help save your life and those people that are around you and that are dear to you.
I want to ask you, because I know everybody has their own thoughts about different things. You don't see people having measles anymore because most people are vaccinated or when they're born. The measles with, the polio vaccine with Dr. Salk back in the day, Big C. And so we live a pretty healthy life because of vaccines. And oftentimes people say, well, I'm going to wait. I'm just going to pray my way to health, Big C. I know down south you encounter a lot of that mentality. Also, I'm just going to pray my way into health. Who needs a vaccine when I have prayer? Have you run across that being more pervasive in the black community, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I've run across it in all communities here in the South, but let me put it in a true perspective that people don't understand. Yes, they paused the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, Charlton, because out of 6 million injections, they said they had 6 fatalities out of that. Let me put it in true perspective if Americans want to understand. Since the beginning of the year, Charlton, we have had 57 mass shootings in America, okay? 57 mass shootings that are on record, all right? They haven't paused those mass shootings. And in the last mass shooting we had down in Indianapolis, Charlton, there were 8 people killed, 8, at a FedEx facility. There was more people that have died from the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So if people want to put things in true perspective, let's not weigh getting a vaccination for COVID-19 versus the mass shootings in America that are horrific and are done by the hate of some crazed individual, Charlton. This vaccine will save lives. There are other medications that have killed more people than the COVID-19 vaccination, Charlton, but the lives that are potentially saved from getting this vaccine are uncountable. Yeah,
I mean, that's very well said. I'm also due for my vaccination, Big C. I know whenever someone goes to a hospital, I'm always good about getting my yearly checkups, and every 6 months I get a checkup just to go by the doctor. They do blood work, and they do things to check and see if there's anything they could treat before it becomes a problem. And so I know every doctor, they're doing the best they can to just give information out to people and let them know that you're better with science than if we were to close all the hospitals and let people just pray their way into health. So good job on that. I also want to touch on something that happened today, not 420 celebration. And before I even ask you, what flavor lollipop did you choose, Big C?
Well, I didn't take one, Charlton. All I could do was laugh. I mean, she made me so giddy. You got to understand this nurse is like 4'10", 4'11", you know,
Yeah.
all of 105 pounds maybe.
Yep.
And all I could do is laugh because it was I'm sitting there and I'm as tall sitting as she was standing.
Yeah.
And we were looking eye to eye, and all I could do was laugh.
Yeah, but she had the power because she had that needle and you didn't have the needle. Big C, it's all fair and level war. Sometimes it's the power of the needle that makes people pay attention. It's all fair and level war. I want to touch on what happened today up in Minneapolis. It's something that everybody's been talking about, I guess, over the past couple of hours today. I was thinking it's going to be later this month that they had a verdict in the Derek Chauvin. Former officer Derek Chauvin was found guilty of murder and manslaughter of George Floyd by a jury in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Big C. And I know they've talked about so many things over the last year since that happened last year, and so many other things that have all happened with impunity. No one really got to pay the price. They just got acquitted, and people would go up and down the street and protest and show their complaints, and then about a week or two later, it was all back to just life as normal. Give me your feeling on your thought. I'm glad that justice was served. It's not over for a lot of other cases out there, but at least there is a step in the right direction. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I have mixed feelings on all of that when you say it's a step in the right direction. This was the proper call that could be made by the jurors today, Charlton. I mean, it came down, do you believe what you saw, or do you believe a lie that somebody wants to tell you about the ending of the life of Mr. George Floyd, Charlton? We all watched that horrific tape that lasted 9.5 minutes for an entire year. The jury had to watch it over and over. I think at the end of the day, the jury said the needs of the few outweigh the needs of the many or the one. They knew of the devastation that would come if they acquitted this former officer, Charlton, of the charge. But as you like to cross politics and sports a lot, I also think that this was a make-up call. It's how officials will make up a call when they blow a call early in the game, Charlton. And that's what the jury did in this scenario. Let's make this one up, and let's get this one guy, because we can't even talk him out of this one and stuff. His attorney couldn't even talk him out. But you think about, since the death of George Floyd, how many other unarmed black men and women have been shot. I give a lot of credit to Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, Charlton. He's an African-American man. He had the courage to bring these charges against white police officers in the state of Minneapolis. But if you look not too far away in the state of Kentucky, Attorney General Daniel Cameron, a black man also, Charlton, refused to bring charges against those 8 police officers that killed Breonna Taylor while she was sleeping in her bed, because he is a Mitch McConnell, a protege, and Mitch told him, don't do that.
Yeah.
And so he never brought up the evidence in the grand jury about Breonna Taylor being killed. They only charged one police officer for shooting into the apartment of a white family that was adjacent, but they did not charge him for shooting into the black family apartment that was adjacent also to the late Breonna Taylor's apartment. But so when I look at this judgment today, Charlton, we just had the young man that was killed in Minneapolis last week that was unarmed at a traffic stop. You know, will this stop police officers from killing unarmed black people? I don't think so, Charlton. You know, we have great police officers that I'd love to honor every day of the week because they do a marvelous job in keeping America safe, working through all this vitriol that happened in the Chauvin case, Charlton.
Yeah.
And those police officers, men and women, should be honored every day for the admirable job that they do.
Yeah.
But what they need to do more than anything else, Charlton, is root out the bad police officers that accompany them to work every day. Until they turn on them, Charlton, we will never have equal justice in America.
You know, I was talking to a retired law enforcement officer from Chicago. He had been in law enforcement 38 years and rose pretty high in the ranks. And he was saying, as much as people don't believe that the decent law enforcement, they're happy with what happened today. Because the ones that really, just like a doctor, you had your COVID-19 shot. For people who are cynical, they think, well, I can't trust science. But they will eat processed food that's also scientifically made, Big C, that leads them into other health issues. But this retired police officer, he's a sergeant, former sergeant, he was saying that talking to all of his friends across the country that so much junk goes on that they got to deal with. They're the ones that got to show up when a crime is committed. And he said that the decent law enforcement, that they're so happy of what happened today because it makes their job easier for the good officers who want to also get rid of that garbage. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, if those good officers want to make their job even easier, Charlton, then they have to uproot the bad officers. They can't stay silent. That's what has hurt policing over the decades, Charlton, is that the good officers stay silent behind that blue shield. You do not testify and you do not go against a fellow officer. Well, we saw that change in the Chauvin trial, Charlton, in Minneapolis, where good police officers no longer wanted to be labeled as being a bad apple, Charlton. There's no apples walking around with guns that are choking and shooting people, Charlton. They're not. Those are bad people, and they have to be labeled as that. You can't call him a bad apple. He's a bad officer. He's a bad person. Bottom line. And if they're bad, they need to get rid of police immunity, Charlton. If you get rid of police immunity and you're a bad officer, you will leave the force.
Yeah.
Because you know you're no longer protected by that blue shield.
Yeah, it's a day that obviously nothing's going to bring him back. You know, he has a family's going to have to go on without him. But there's a lot of other people in this criminal justice complex that have faced similar situations, and they had no justice, and the country had no peace behind it. And it's just good that I can hear from law enforcement saying that they're happy. And you're right too. Some of the people in that department that Chauvin worked for before he was, bailed, booked into jail today, they actually testified against him. And I think for anyone that doubts that we do need strong law enforcement, we just don't need a brutalizing law enforcement. We don't need a law enforcement that's anti-everybody who's not Caucasian. And when you're quiet about an injustice, then you tacitly consent to it. So I hope it's a sea change. And one thing that made it so possible, Big C, all over the world, people have this thing in their hand. It's called a cell phone. And almost every cell phone has what's called a video camera. And you can record everything. And I just encourage everyone, when you see something go wrong, like the late John Lewis said, say something and do something. And I'm glad the jury spoke up today. And I know it doesn't bring back the family member for the Floyds, but I do hope that they can find some type of peace that justice was done for their family member. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, if you look at it in a true perspective, Charlton, Derek Chauvin had 18 cases of police brutality filed against him prior to killing George Floyd.
That's right.
And 3 of those cases also involved death, Charlton. He had taken the lives of 3 other American citizens prior to taking the life of George Floyd.
Yeah.
So when you talk about rooting out bad police officers, Charlton, 18 times they had an opportunity to eliminate Derek Chauvin, from the police force in Minneapolis prior to his murder of George Floyd, and they chose not.
Yeah.
So think about how many people have suffered because of Derek Chauvin and being protected by those officers who would not testify against him.
Yeah, very well said. I think that's a sentiment of a lot more people, that because they know they can't hide from videotape. And I gotta be optimistic about it. If they were not videotaped, there probably would have been no charges brought or even an acquittal. That's
the
a fact.
only words that would have counted was those of the police officers.
That's right.
The
Yeah.
videotape is the only thing that convicted him, because
Yep.
they would have hidden all those video cameras from the store and from the street, Charlton.
Yeah.
It was the citizens who took to caring about what was going on, about the life of another human being, Charlton, that pleaded for his life, to ask the officer to stop,
Yeah.
that he was being excessive. And he did not care. He was callous in all of his actions. And I think that was the main thing that the jury looked at, is that he dehumanized George Floyd while he was down on the ground. He did not render any aid to this man while he was still alive, or he even tried to revive him, Charlton. The dehumanization is what I think touched the jury more than anything, because You talked about Michael Vick yesterday going to prison for a few years for dog fighting. That there was more compassion for people fighting, caring about dogs than they were about black life.
Yeah.
And we saw black life. This is one of the few times that the entire world got an opportunity to watch a murder on television in real time, Charlton, real time.
Real time.
Not something that was fabricated in a movie scene,
yeah,
but real human life being lost by an individual that did not care.
Yeah, and he looked like he didn't care even when they booked him. Maybe he was on some type of medication, but he just kept looking around and like, what do you mean I'm guilty? I've done this many times before and nothing ever happened. But it's all fair and love and war. And his attorney that defended him, I know he's happy he got paid, but he's also garbage. But that's part of the criminal justice system. You got both sides got to represent. But congratulations for justice, and may everybody who's dealing with something get justice. The dirt will always come out in the wash. You just got to put the dirt in the wash to have the dirt come out of the wash. It's all fair and love and war. Big C, I want to touch on African American history. And boy, is it so poignant today when from President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, who have their own history of mass incarceration of black men. Anyone can change, and I know they've atoned, but they also have a history of making sure with the crime bill with Joe Biden back in the day, even though he's contrite about it, he apologized about it, trying to make amends. Also, Kamala Harris had her own issues where she actually showed up at the hearing for people that some said were innocently accused and convicted. And so she has her own dirt in the background, and hopefully she can make amends for that and not just applaud what happened with the George Floyd, but go back to some of those people that you helped in prison for very minor crimes, and they're still behind bars as we're all giving press conferences today. And that's the real talk, Big C. I want to touch on black sports history as we celebrate the accomplishments of these lesser-known African-American athletes, Big C. They're also, many of them were not on videotape, Big C, that have inspired us over the decades to achieve greatness. Every pro team, Jackie Robinson, going back to January 18th, 1958, Big C, future NHL, you think about the NHL Hall of Famer, the great Willie O'Ree, takes the ice for the Boston Bruins, becoming pro hockey's first black player, Big C. A lot of African Americans used the Underground Railroad to escape slavery in the United States and flee to Canada. Their bravery and toughness was carried onto the ice for their grandson, Big C, and by the grandson born in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Big C. He took to the national game quickly, and in the beginning did not feel the racial animus that he would experience as an adult, Big C. He wrote in an autobiography of Willie O'Ree, hockey's black pioneer, the fact that I was black never came up when he played as a kid. You could have been purple or green or white with a stripe down the middle of your forehead, no one cared. All that mattered was that you were a good player, but as you became older, he learned that there really was a color barrier, and offered the shaman, he knew there was a color barrier, and he knew there was one that would protect him, Big C, a lot like what happened in hockey, Big C. Your thoughts?
That's the beauty of a child, Charlton, that Willie O'Ree was born into. Being in Canada, being anywhere in the world, children don't know racism until an adult teaches it to them.
That's right.
All they know is that there's somebody their size who likes doing what they do.
Yeah.
Period. It's a shame that adults have to inflict racism in the innocence of a child. Children are born and they can be raised in any culture of any nationality, Charlton, and adopted by other cultures. And all they know is that they're loved.
Yeah.
And that's how everybody should go through life.
Yeah.
Knowing that they're loved. Willie O'Ree as a child, being a black child in Canada, knowing that all the kids on the street when they were playing hockey just knew that another kid that was their size was playing hockey.
Yeah.
As he said, there was no color barrier.
No.
And if all the world could be like children, Charlton, racism could be almost abolished.
Yeah, it really could be. O'Ree suffered a serious eye injury as a junior player and lost most of his vision in his right eye. He ignored the doctor's advice to quit the sport that he loved so much, and he hid his injury, knowing that his partial blindness would make him ineligible for the NHL. And to compensate for his blindness while playing the left wing, O'Ree had to turn his head far over his right shoulder, looking around, trying to overcompensate. just so he could see where the puck was on the ice, Big C. But also, while playing as an integrated minor league team with a working relationship with the Boston Bruins, Big C, O'Ree makes history when he becomes the first black athlete to play in an NHL game. 3 seasons later, he was the first black player to score in an NHL game, and Big C was a 3-2 win over the Montreal Canadiens. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the honor that Mr. O'Ree had, Charlton, being the first black player to play in the NHL, the National Hockey League, and that's back during the era when they had the original 6, Charlton. You think about the pride and the prestige, and here's a black man on white ice out there, Charlton.
Yeah.
Wasn't hard to see. But, you know, the admiration that the world appreciated to have him break that color barrier.
Yep.
And you think about how difficult it was for him. We talk about how difficult it was for Jackie Robertson. This was a man that, when he broke the barrier in the NHL, there were nobody else that looked like him.
No.
Just like when he was playing on the streets as a kid. There was nobody else that looked like him. But when he was a kid on the street, those other kids didn't care.
Nope.
When he became a man on the ice, he met with different vitriol.
Yeah, and everybody knows there's a book called The Color of Law. A lot of things that we've seen and experienced in society, it's been intentional. And so that's why even the sports brethren all over the sports television and radio today, people are talking about what happened with the Chauvin murder trial, how police officers took an oath. He swore to protect and serve the public. But he's murdered 3 people. And he's finally had to pay for what he did today because it was on tape. Again, if there was no videotape, it doesn't matter what people would have said. It just would not have happened, Big C. But also, like you look at the NHL, O'Ree, number 22, his jersey number was retired by the Boston Bruins on February 18th, 2021, this year, Big C. His number 22 jersey hangs in TD Garden's rafters with 12 others, Big C. But of those other 12 that are hanging in the rafters at TD Gardens, his had to come the more difficult route because he had so many things to overcome. And some of the things he had to overcome, it was the climate that helped Officer Chauvin get away with so much garbage because he knew he was protected and he had to fight through it, or we had to fight through that, not the other members that have their jerseys retired. Big C, your thoughts?
You think about that, Charlton, and how honored Mr. O'Ree was having his jersey retired in TD Garden, being the first black man on ice in that arena, Charlton. And, you know, to be hanging in the rafters with all those other Boston Bruins as well as the Boston Celtics, Charlton, and many black Boston Celtics greats that are hanging up there, and he's the only black Boston Bruin hanging in those hollowed rafters.
Yeah, the only one. He did a lot to overcome whatever situation was placed in front of him, and so I'm just proud to be able to mention how great he was and what he did to make himself, you know, good enough through all the pressures of Jim Crow to be honored by his team, even though it was just, you know, put up there this year at Big C. It's all fair and love and war. I want to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. When we come back, I'm going to talk more about some things that are going on in the life and also the sports universe. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. I want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see our apps pop up all over the world. And I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. Do you believe in miracles? Okay, a little bit different of a miracle. Not much of a miracle, Big C. But NBA basketball. There's a new sheriff in town, and his name is Steph Curry. People already know who he is. But he's really upped his game, Big C. The staggering numbers from Steph Curry's incredible scoring streak. It seemed inconceivable that any player, think about it, already thought of as the greatest shooter in the history of the NBA universe, Big C, the great Steph Curry. If you think about what he did to elevate his game even higher, He's doing just that. Curry extended his remarkable scoring streak on Monday with 49 points. He would have got 50, but someone poked him in the eye, Big C. You know how they do in Philadelphia. They poked him in the eye, so he wasn't able to get to 50 at the free throw line. But he had dropped 49 points, led the Golden State Warriors to a 107-96 win over the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, Curry scored at least 30 points, Big C, in 11 consecutive games, and it's the longest such stretch in league history by a player that's 33 years older, surpassing the great Kobe Bryant, who had 10 straight games of 30-plus point games in 2012. Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, when you talk about a hired assassin, that's Stephen Curry. I mean, here's a man, Charlton, that goes out there and strikes fear in everybody, regardless of height or stature in the NBA. And when you look at what he has done over the last month, you know, scoring over 30 points a game, Charlton, it's a remarkable feat. And to do that without a lot of help, I mean, he has great teammates.
Yeah.
But everyone knows that he's going to get the ball and take a shot. And he's always got pressure on him. Very rarely does he get a free look at the basket.
Yeah, he hardly gets a free look at the basket. And he creates space by being such a great dribbler, being able to dribble and get NBA talented players that can't stay up with him. 49 points, Big C. 10 threes for Curry. Most threes in a 10-game span, 72, Big C. 11 straight 30-plus point game. 10 times, think about this. 10 threes in 4 out of the last 5 games. Curry shot 14 of 28 from the field. He shoots a higher percentage from three-point, at least recently. 10 of 17 on three-pointers, 11 of 12 on free throws. Again, someone poked him in the eye. You know how people are in Philadelphia. Big C is all 11 for him. But think about this. He's so amazing. 40 points out into the season. 8 times he's done that. And 4th time in the last 5 games, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you look at the fear that he puts in, I mean, and I don't know if he feels the pressure, Charlton, but this is a guy that's single-handedly pushing his team towards the playoffs.
Yeah.
You know what the Warriors are without Steph Curry. They had the number 2 pick in last year's NBA draft. Now that he's come back this year healthy off of that broken hand, Charlton,
yep,
he has just become a sensation of his remarkable self.
Yeah, it really is. All that work with his father back in the day and then playing with his brother in the backyard must have helped a lot. I'm sure his mother did a lot too, helping him perfect this game. Diving deeper when you think about Curry, recent numbers are somewhat staggering. And I know people talk about who's the MVP of the league and who has the best winning streak of the league and who has the best record in the league, and that makes them available for MVP. Well, Philly has a better record than Golden State, but Curry was the best player on the floor last night. Now he leads the NBA in scoring, Big C, 31.4 points per game, a career high. During the 11-game streak, he's averaged 40 points on 54.1% shooting overall, Big C, 49.7% from three-point range. For the season, Big C, he's shooting 49.1% overall, 43.1% from three-point range. And if they had a 4-point line on the floor, he would find that too, Big C.
Well, I mean, you saw that during that All-Star competition, Charlton, where he knocked down a couple of 4-point balls.
Yeah.
But this is just the greatness of Steph Curry when you look at what he does night in and night out, and we have not seen a streak this hot in the NBA since the great Wilt Chamberlain.
Yeah, the great Wilt Chamberlain. Think about this. He's made 72 three-pointers in the last 10 games. That's most ever in a 10-game stretch. His streak of 30-point games is the longest by a Warrior since, as you mentioned, the great Wilt Chamberlain in 1964. 47 and 49 points in his last 2 games. He's the first player 33 years older or more to score 45-plus in games back-to-back since the great Michael Jordan in 2001. But I got to tell you, as good as Michael was, I remember there was a playoff game and believe the Chicago Bulls. It was Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. They were playing the Portland Trail Blazers in an NBA Finals. And Jordan hit 6 3-point plays, and the broadcaster has acted as if he'd never seen that type of performance, Big C. And here Curry is getting like 6 3-point plays in the first half, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, nobody's seen what Seth Curry has done in his career, Charlton. He's been phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, if people want to really know about Michael Jordan, look at the first 6 years of his career when the Boston Celtics used to whoop his butt on a regular basis in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But Steph Curry, is a diminutive player when you look at the stature of NBA players. but he has the biggest shot in the game.
He got the biggest shot of the game, and he's also been lifting weights. So Steph Curry, he just needs to splash brother back because you can't keep up that pace. Or maybe he can. When you think about how great, I mean, to be at that age is amazing. But I just want to bring up, too, before Harden, got a little hitch in his giddy-up, most consecutive 30-point games in the last 40 seasons, Big C. Steph Curry just did his thing with 11. The great Michael Jordan in 86 to 87 did 11. Shaquille O'Neal from 2000 2001 had 11. Kevin Durant, 2013 to 14 had 12 with OKC. The great Moses Malone, 81 to 82 had 13. Trace McGrady down in Orlando in 2002 to 2003 had 14. Kobe Bryant, 2002 to 2003 had 16. Big C, the great James Harden, who was going to be my MVP this year, but he has a check engine light on. 2018 to 2019, 32 times plus 30. Big C, your thoughts?
People forget about how good James Harden is, and it won't be remembered until he's out of the game.
Yeah.
But you talk about a professional scorer. James Harden has been that throughout his career.
Yeah.
He's made adjustments in his game this year in moving over to the net, Charlton. But when James Harden needs to get 30, he can get 30.
Yeah. So, Curry did his thing, but he got about 20 more to go to catch the great James Harden as far as, consecutive games. But it's still, no one's done it at the age that the great Steph Curry has done. Also, NBA news, congratulations, Steph Curry. Also the best NBA name in the universe. Really appreciate seeing him do his thing. Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic, the Joker Big C, off of a double overtime thriller. The great Joker advanced his own MVP case in a huge effort to help the Denver Nuggets as the Memphis Grizzlies 139-137 in double overtime Monday. The Joker finished with 47 points, dropped 47 points, and it was overshadowed by the great Steph Curry dropping his 49. Curry did it in regulation. The Joker did it in overtime, double overtime. Finished with 15 rebounds, 8 assists, and put the Nuggets ahead for good with a tie-breaking three-pointer in the final minute of the second overtime. Denver's won 11 of his last 13 to climb to 4th place in the Western Conference. And for the season, Big C, the Joker is now averaging 26.4 points, 11.1 rebounds, 8.8 assists on 56.9% shooting overall, and 41.9 from three-point range. Big C, your thoughts?
And when you look at the Joker, Charlton, you have to talk about the impactfulness that he has on that organization. I mean, we can load at the numbers that Steph Curry has.
Yeah.
But when you talk about an overall impact, no player in the NBA right now has more impact on the game than what Nikola Jokic does in Denver, Charlton. You talk about the scoring, you talk about the rebounds, you talk about the assists. This man makes it great for all his teammates. Those assists alone, you have to add that to the stat line as far as points of what he's scoring per game.
Yeah.
But when he's going in and being Mr. Windex on the backboard, Charlton, and swiping everything away, that's the dominance that Jokic brings to the game that people do not want to pay attention to.
Yeah.
You talk about them winning 11 of their last 14 games, Charlton. This is the reason why Denver's in that position, because of Nikola Jokic.
Yeah. Yeah, if he can reach that high to get a rebound, I'm sure there's not a spot on any window where he lives, Big C. And when you think about the year, there's so many other top MVP candidates, whether it's James Harden, people thought about Durant, but he's been out too long, whether it's the Joker, or whether it's Steph Curry, people talked about LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Big C, maybe even some people were talking about Jason Tatum. Everybody can have Dollar Dame, everybody has their own thoughts about an MVP, but when you show up every single day and you're doing your thing, I think in MVP candidates that have missed significant time, the Joker's playing every game so far and could be the deciding factor for him to take home the trophy. And for the season, the Joker's now putting up a nearly triple-double talking about his numbers, 26.4 points, 11.1 rebounds, 8.8 assists, 1.4 steals per game. The guy's just doing his thing, Big C. He saved for the field goal percentage. Every single one of the numbers are career highs. 56.9%, 41.9%, and 85.4%. The guy's doing everything that he can do to help the Denver Nuggets win. Do I think he's the best player in the NBA? No. Is he the MVP for Denver, especially since Murray went down, his brother went down, Big C, with an ankle injury? He's obviously hard to vote against, Big C. Your thoughts?
But see, you can't base the most valuable player in the NBA because he's a highlight reel, Charlton. The most valuable player is something that's consistent, that day in and day out you can count on him. He's not on the injury list. He's not on the load management list. He's out there helping his team be as good as they are every night of the season, Charlton, and that's what Jokic represents. Other people that you might want to consider in the MVP race, they're highlight reel players, Charlton, and they have to do something spectacular to get on a sports highlight show. The Joker is so consistent, you just forget about what he does, and you write it in.
Yeah.
Because you know it's going to be there every night, just like he is on the court. And that's what makes someone valuable, Charlton, not because of the glorified dunks that they may make or just the three-point shot that they can knock down that are spectacular, but every night those numbers are consistent.
Yeah, he's doing his thing for Denver, especially without his partner on the team that really can distribute the ball, and the great Jamal Murray, Big T, out with his own injury issues. And we'll see what happens.
But think about that. With Jamal Murray out of the lineup, does Jokic's numbers drop down any? No. Those other players that you might want to consider for MVP, whether it's Harden, whether it's Durant, whether it's James, whether it's Curry, they miss considerable time throughout the year. And their teams can win without them. But nobody can win in Denver without Jokic.
Yeah, I will still make a case for Curry. I mean, everybody has their own thoughts. But if you look at Steph Curry, and when he was the NBA's unanimous MVP, Big C, I think is the only time it's ever happened, and he was back-to-back MVPs, he had the Splash Brother with him, Big C, and that's obviously waiting for Klay Thompson to get back. Will he even come back the same? I doubt it, but he'll probably still be a good shooter. Also, he had the great Iguodala. That was a defensive stopper, Big C, on the team. And then you also have Draymond Green, who's also a defensive stopper and an attitude setter for the Golden State Warriors. And even when you add in the time when they brought in Durant, and Durant won the Finals MVP twice, I thought the last time it should have gone to Curry, but it didn't. But everybody has their own choice in players. But I'm just saying that Curry's played with arguably the best shooters in the history of the game in Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant. And he doesn't back down to anybody, and he's still doing it without Durant and without Klay Thompson. But it's just an opinion, and he's setting records. It's all fair and love and war. But I want to take you to another guy, also in the small market, Big C, in the Midwest, the great Donovan Mitchell. He belongs in the MVP consideration. I know you may disagree, but despite losing on the road against the Mavericks on Monday night, the Utah Jazz hold the best record in the NBA, 38-12, and the Jazz are led by the great Donovan Mitchell, averaging 25.4 points per game, 4.3 assists per game, 4.4 rebounds per game. And the great Donovan Mitchell, he also belongs in that MVP conversation, Big C. Your thoughts?
I mean, he most definitely does. You're playing on a team with the best record in the NBA. There's a reason why you have the best record.
Yeah.
And you have to have a floor leader, which has been Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Charlton, he's been overshadowed by those larger market players. We talked about James Harden a lot. Number one media city. People talked about LeBron James and Anthony Davis early in the season. So both of those guys decided to sit it out until the playoffs start.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at Seth Curry having a resurgent season from those great seasons he had 2 or 3 years ago, Charlton, when the Warriors are on top of the Heat winning championships. But Nikola Jokic has been the one consistent of all those players. And I tell you that those guys really are the top 2, 3. I'm going to take Jokic right now, number 1, Curry number 2, Mitchell number 3. And the way to figure it out is see whose record is the best over the next 20 to 17 games that are left in the NBA season. Look and see what their teams do and what they do individually during this last stretch towards the playoffs, Charlton, and that will determine the MVP of the league.
Yeah, that's why I love NBA action, Big C. It's fantastic. Everybody has their own flavor of lollipop, and I know you turned down the one from the nurse because you make your own shine lollipops. You're like, where can you get one of those? You said you get a special order. It's all fair, level war. Also, NBA game of the night, Big C. The Clippers at the Blazers. A pair of teams in the thick of the Western Conference playoff race. They meet in what would be a first-round matchup if the playoffs were to start today. You have the LA Clippers. They've won 14 of the last 17 to pull within 2 games of the Phoenix Suns for second place. The Blazers are in a 6th place, but have lost 6 of 9 and are trying to find a way to avoid falling to a play-in spot, Big C. They're 2 games ahead of the Mavericks, but Portland has the 4th toughest schedule the rest of the way, and Dallas has the 2nd easiest schedule, according to many people, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, all the games are significant when you look at this point of the season, Charlton. And as you talked about, if the playoffs are starting tonight, they could potentially be playing each other, but it's not. We still got another 3 to 4 weeks before the playoffs get going. But every game is significant at this point.
Yeah, it's all significant, Big C. That's why, some people are cynical, and some people are saying, athletes make so much money, they don't have to show up. Like a boxer can never take a day off. A boxer can maybe sit back in a round. An MMA fighter, they can't take any round off, Big C. So boxers get a 12-round match. Maybe they can coast for the first 2 or 3 rounds just to kind of fill out their opponent. Then they come on strong down the stretch. Football players, maybe some guys can take a play off here or there. They can pull themselves out of a game. NBA players, we've seen guys, hey, my hamstring's tight, or my fingernails are too long and I can't dribble, whatever it is. So it makes people cynical when a player says, I can't play, but I'll be ready when the playoffs come around. Think about somebody, in my opinion, who's never taken plays off. Okay, he's not a robot, he's human. But the great CP3, Big C, Chris Paul III, pass of the great match. Think about it. He handed out 13 assists Monday. He passed the great Magic Johnson for 5th place on the NBA all-time universe list, Big C. Think about what he does. Paul finished the night with 10,145 career dimes to Johnson's 10,141. He also had 22 points and 7 rebounds to help the Phoenix Suns eke out a 127 win over the Milwaukee Bucks, Big C. I like so much about Chris Paul over the last 6 games, Big C. The great Chris Paul has 59 total assists, just 4 turnovers, Big C. He's called passing Magic Johnson surreal. Said he hopes he can get the game ball autographed by the Hall of Famer, and there will never be another Magic Johnson. Paul said, I don't know the man. It's surreal. At the same time, Chris Paul's probably the most well-rounded, maybe least respected, admired athlete when it comes to production. Like the Joker, Big C, he's always there, Big C. Your thoughts?
I don't know if he's the least respected, Charlton. He's the least recognized. When people want to look at superstar categories and not recognize what a basketball player does in totality. Just like Nikolai Jokic, you have to look at the same with a Chris Paul in the same light. What he does for his teammates, how he makes them better.
Yeah.
We've seen that every place that Chris Paul has stopped, is that team has advanced to the playoffs, Charlton, and they may not have been in the playoffs the year before. Look at how he has uplifted the Phoenix Suns to the second-best record in the NBA. He is not looked at as a superstar on that team, Charlton, but he is the leader.
Yeah.
And he's a leader by example to help make teammates better.
Yeah.
I got to put him in the top 4 of the MVP race also, Charlton, because what he has meant to that organization since arriving this season.
Yeah, and Chris Paul, he's like the car that starts every time you go out to the garage. He starts all the time. And so he's not the biggest guy on the court. He's not the fastest guy. He's not the guy with the whatever that people are looking for. He's not the slam dunk highlight reel. But he's there. And that should count for something. Big C, NBA, there's 10 questions for final stretch of NBA season. Will the Lakers secure, I just want to get your thoughts on in the last 10 minutes. Will the Lakers secure a top 4 seed and the Knicks trying to end their playoff drought? So will the Lakers make a late push for home court in the first round? The Los Angeles Lakers are currently trying to stay afloat while their 2 franchise stars are nursing injuries that have kept them sidelined for a significant chunk of time. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Lakers are a team that's going to be in disarray once the playoffs start, Charlton, because you have to incorporate Davis and James back into the lineup. I'm not so sure that Davis will make it back. I think that injury was similar to the injury that Kevin Durant suffered a couple of years ago when he was in Golden State.
Well, I differ. I still have the Lakers. If they have both of those guys on the court, they'll most likely find their way to the Western Conference Finals. We'll see what happens. But if your check engine light is all the way on and your car's on limp mode, it's not going to be the same. Number 2 question, can the Celtics finish in the top 4 in the East? Sometimes they play like they're the best team in the East, and then other times they play like they're the 10th best team in the East. Boston has had a pretty underwhelming season, Big C. That's just a fact. And when you think about given the preseason expectations, the great Jason Tatum, who has star written all over him, Big C, if he could just stay focused, Big C, the great Jaylen Brown, and then defensive stalwart the great Marcus Smart. They showed just how much of an impact they can make. But Tatum went from, I think he dropped 44 against Golden State. In their last outing, he only dropped 14. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this was a team that was in the Eastern Conference Finals last season, Charlton. A lot of young, budding superstars that are almost ready for prime time, and they've been on the verge the last 3 years.
Yeah, they have.
They just haven't got over the hump.
Yeah.
I think you really need a lot of offense from Marcus Smart as you get down that playoff stretch. You know what you can get from Brown and Tatum, Charlton, and Kemba Walker needs to stay healthy.
Yeah, got to stay healthy. Number 3, who wins the race for home court advantage through the Eastern playoffs between the Nets and the 76ers? The Sixers got had by Steph Curry last night, and a team in Golden State that's just 500 on the season. So I couldn't understand that one. It's just maybe they were having a good time watching Curry shoot the lights out. But Philadelphia 76ers, they looked like they were going to run away with the number 1 seed, Big C. The Nets, and you think about all the teams, the 2 teams face each other tomorrow night, and what is sure to be an exciting matchup that could end up being the difference between who gets the number 1 seed. But for Brooklyn, you can't count on Durant to show up. You can't count on James Harden to show up. And sometimes Kyrie Irving has a different thing to do that night, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is a team that doesn't have an X factor right now. And you know, Durant's going to be out for some time again. And James Harden, you know, is going to be limping into the playoffs. Kyrie Irving might be off on some sabbatical or at a birthday party. You never know. But, you know, the Philadelphia 76ers, I think that they'll sure up that first place bid in the East.
Yeah, I started the season saying when the doctor came to town, I penciled in, not that it matters, but I penciled in Philadelphia and the Los Angeles Lakers playing for the NBA championship. We'll see what happens. Number 4, can the Jazz hang on? You know Jazz sounds good, Big C. Can the Jazz hang on to the number 1 seat in the West? Unlike the race atop the East standings, the Utah Jazz, they have a bit more breathing room if you call 1.5 games separates them from the second place Phoenix Suns that have a lot of heat like a dragon coming out of their mouth. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the Jazz have been consistent all year. Yes, the Phoenix Suns have been hot. Chris Paul is on a torrid pace with his assists and even scoring, Charlton. He's helped his team realize their potential already, and they're going to be a force in the playoffs.
Yeah, they'll be a force. Number 5, will the Warriors, and the best player, it's not the best shooter in the history of the NBA universe, the great Steph Curry, Big C. Will the Warriors or the Pelicans, the great Zion Williamson, make the West playoffs? Will they make that playoff play-in tournament, Big C? At the opposite end of the Western playoff structure, there stands the Golden State Warriors, who entering Wednesdays currently occupy a 1-game lead over the New Orleans Pelicans for that 10th spot with 2 of the league's most marketed players, the great Zion Williamson and the great Steph Curry. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, Zion, everybody wants to see Zion. They spent more time on television than any team this year in the NBA, that's the New Orleans Pelicans. But I think the way that Steph Curry has risen, Charlton, in the last month of the season, I think everybody wants to see him back in prime time because there's nobody as compelling when it comes to taking a shot in the NBA. And I think the Warriors will be able to hold off the Jazz. They won't have to face what Memphis did last year.
Yeah, you got to see Steph Curry coming to town shooting threes, or do you want to see Zion Williamson getting dunks? I'd rather see Steph Curry shooting threes. Number 6, can the Raptors, can they catch the Bulls for the 10th spot in the East, Big C? Both teams have been struggling recently, posting 3-7 records in their last 10 games. But each the Bulls and the Raptors hold a 2-game lead over the Raptors. The Bulls do, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I think if they get Zach LaVine back in Chicago, Charlton, that will make a difference with that team. The Raptors, they're one of those teams that like to get into the playoffs because they have that maturity that they've been there before. The Bulls are young and an upcoming team, but I think if Zach LaVine returns, Charlton, they'll get to that point.
The great Zach LaVine out of UCLA, Big C. Number 7, does the Melo Ball return at all this season? And for entertainment purposes, I'm sure we would all love to see LaMelo Ball in the postseason. He's like Houdini with the basketball, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he's been an outstanding Charlton rookie this year. He was in the front running for Rookie of the Year until he broke his wrist. You know, and I think that Charlotte may force him back, you know, in the latter part of the season, which may be a good thing also to help him for that playoff push. But I think overall in his career, it's not going to benefit him coming back this year.
Yeah, sometimes just get healthy. Don't rush yourself back. Number 8, will the great Victor Oladipo be healthy enough to help the Miami Heat, Big C? Just 4 games into his tenure with the Miami Heat, after being traded at the deadline. The great Victor Oladipo, he got sidelined with what the team is calling a little bit of knee soreness. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is one of the things by playing so close back-to-back seasons in the NBA is that the bodies haven't had an opportunity to fully, rest up. Also, we've seen so many leg injuries with these great NBA veterans this year, and Oladipo has been the latest of the superstars in that trade with Indiana to come over to Miami. And we know that the Heat needs his help because Tyler Hero has disappeared somewhere in that roster, and they need that other scorer.
Yeah, they need that other scorer, Big C. And, with Bam's doing his thing, it's hard to score on anybody down in the paint when Bam's doing his thing. Number 9, will anyone catch the Joker, Big C? Nikolai Jokic for the MVP race. Injuries to just about every other MVP candidate. Even Steph Curry has a little bruised tailbone, but unlike a lot of other players, he plays through it. But when you think about the Joker, Big C, he's got the numbers. His team is winning big, even though sometimes double overtime. And what may cement his status as the final month of the season, he's already done enough to prove that he's the season's MVP, and he's consistently playing. He shows up every night. But will it get the people who may think otherwise off of his back, Big C? I mean, at the end of the day, it's about what flavor of ice cream you like, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think at the end of the day, it's about the consistency of a player. When we look around at MVPs, regardless of the league, Major League Baseball, NHL, NFL, the NBA, Charlton, it's about the guy who was there every night that you can count on. That's what a most valuable player is. Not a guy that's just a highlight reel, but a guy who plays the game so consistently is that you lose a train of thought in thinking about it, Charlton. You start looking at other guys when they have a highlight reel performance.
That's right.
But then you go back to the stat sheet, and you see that Joker's been there all night, all year long.
Yeah.
That's what makes him the top candidate for the MVP in the NBA.
The great Lionel Richie, all night long. And all night long he's been there, Big C. Number 10 in the NBA basketball universe. Will the New York Knicks finally make the playoffs, Big C, led by the great Julius Randle? And head coach Tom Thibodeau's hard-nosed style of play might be coaching MVP, Coach of the Year. Just a thought. The Knicks have been playing their best basketball in a decade, Big C, but there's still some hurdles to clear before they can end their 9-year playoff drought in the Big Apple, which could include the Raptors, the Bulls, the Pacers, and the Hornets. But NBA is better when the New York Knicks are dribbling, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about Thibodeau, Charlton, and the tremendous job that he's done with the Knicks. Chicago Bulls said he wasn't the right guy for the job, and they're struggling, hoping to make the playoffs. The Knicks will make the playoffs. You look at Julius Randle. The Lakers said we didn't want him a couple years ago, Charlton. You look at him again. The New Orleans Pelicans didn't want him last year. He found a home in New York, and he has become one of the better players in the Eastern Conference of the NBA. Made the All-Star team this year, Charlton, leading the Knicks in scoring. We've seen the last 4 games where he scored over 30 points in each one of those games. The NBA is exciting when the Big Apple is in play, Charlton. The Big Apple will be playing in the NBA playoffs this season.
Think about Randall's been more serviceable than Kevin Durant and James Harden and even Kyrie Irving, but he's not considered better than those 3 players by media, Big C. But the guy starts every time his check is light does not come on. Tonight's NBA matchups, Tuesday, April 20th, a small schedule. Orlando is at Atlanta, Big C. Charlotte's at the New York Knicks. The games are already underway. Brooklyn's at New Orleans. Brooklyn, it's like they're just, whatever they're doing, I hope that everybody really needs to rest up. LA Clippers at Portland, game of the night. And then Minnesota at Sacramento. This game with the Clippers at Portland, there's a lot riding for the Western Conference. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Clippers should handle Portland. Portland is an up-and-down team. Yes, they have a great backcourt by name, Charlton, but you have to have that consistency, and that's what they've been not getting, Charlton. Edith Cantor's been a beast in the middle for his defensive rebounds. He's been dominating the boards night in and night out for the Portland Trailblazers, but their guards have been inconsistent. You talk a lot about Dame Lillard, but Dame has not been hitting that prime-time shot to keep Portland afloat.
Yeah. It's all fair and love and war. I love NBA basketball. I want to close with 2 more stories on this beautiful April 20th. Some people call it 420 if you're into that kind of stuff. Tuesday, April 20th, Major League Baseball universe, Big C. The Dodgers at the Seattle Mariners. The White Sox of Chicago at the Cleveland Indians, Big C. You also have you in Minnesota, the Twins at the Oakland A's in Oakland. Have a doubleheader there. And then Atlanta at the New York Yankees. Will the Yankees find a way to win again, Big C? The Anaheim, actually you have the Arizona Diamondbacks at the Cincinnati Reds. Baltimore Orioles at the Miami Marlins, Big C. St. Louis at Washington Nationals. San Francisco Giants at Philadelphia. And hopefully nobody gets poked in the eye for the Giants tonight, Big C, like Curry did last night. You have the Toronto Blue Jays at Boston Red Sox, Big C. New York Mets at Chicago Cubs. Tampa Bay at Kansas City. Houston at Colorado. You have Texas at Angels of Anaheim. Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Milwaukee at San Diego. Should be a great game down there. And then you have Pittsburgh at Detroit. Was postponed. I know everybody has their own flavor of what's going to happen in the world of baseball. But I want to close tonight's show and, just appreciating, Big C. So many people have done what we've been doing for a long time. And that's just being honest and not closing your eyes to injustice anywhere. I'm not saying it's a panacea for everything, but it sure is good when even law enforcement is saying we don't want those kind of officers. Now, maybe it was just because it's on videotape, but every department around the country, they got to know every time they're out, somebody has a camera on them, even if they turn off their body cams. Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, we've witnessed police atrocities since the 60s on newsreels. You may not be old enough to realize that, Charlton, but I've witnessed this for decades, police brutality upon people of color. And the one that really stood out was the Rodney King butt whipping in Los Angeles, Charlton, back in the early 90s, as the world was gripped by that. And yet police said, the jury said that the police had the right to beat a black man like that because they wouldn't have done it if he wasn't doing anything wrong, or if he had complied, they wouldn't have been beating him if he had just laid down on the ground more than what he was doing. I don't know how further down he could have gotten. But we've witnessed atrocities by police officers across this country over and over again, Charlton, and they still continue. Yes, there was a verdict today in Minneapolis, but does that verdict stop the death of unarmed black people in America? I think not, Charlton. They're going to occur. It's just a matter of when. Will it be today? Will it be tomorrow? Will it be next week? It's going to occur. We were going to see it on the news again. What will the nation's reaction be? Back to normal? Is that what they're going to say, Charlton? Because I don't think that this verdict today with the Chauvin trial changes the narrative of how police operate. They will say, we sacrificed one, so now that we can go on and continue to do the things that we do. It's not going to change until the laws change, Charlton, until the United States Senate gets rid of police immunity, Charlton, where they can be prosecuted when they commit a crime.
Well, in every building, there's a blueprint, and then there's a plan, and I think every law enforcement agency across the country today, like my law officer, retired 38 years in the service, mentioned there's a blueprint that every office can follow around the country, and I do believe it's going to create for better and safer policing for our citizens. It's all fair and level war. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, rumble, young men rumble, with all you've got to use. How can you lose? Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Charlton, I'm looking forward to in the sports universe, Charlton, that all Americans get vaccinated for COVID-19, especially African Americans get vaccinated. Once we all get vaccinated as a culture, Charlton, and citizens of the United States, then we will be able to attend sporting events in mass. We will have full arenas all over again, and you'll get an opportunity to cheer for those players that you've appreciated and enjoyed over the years. Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, our doctors, our first responders. The utmost respect to all of you for what you have done for the American public in taking care of their health. And all of you great police officers out there, thank you for doing a wonderful job every day.
Every single day. We thank you every day. We thank you every day. You can be thanked every day, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As my mama always says, there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.